As tension in the Middle East continues, an anti-Israel sentiment is spreading throughout several American college campuses. Students and organizations at Harvard University, they've signed a petition demanding the Ivy League divest from all companies who do business with Israel. Meanwhile, the student government at the University of Michigan releasing a statement in support of Palestinians while accusing Israel of, quote, settler colonialism, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid. Joining us now to discuss, Angela Morabito, Campus Reform Fellow, former Press Secretary for Department of Education under Betsy DeVos, and our panelist, Andrea Kaye. Scott Walker here as well. Angela, start us off. Where is this anti-Israeli, pro-Palestinian activism coming from?
It's coming from college campuses, and there it stems from ignorance. Campus Reform has been tracking this anti-Semitism on college campuses for more than 10 years now, and we're watching students actually feel empowered to demand anti-Israel behavior from their universities. Look, these are America's future leaders, and you have 43 student groups at Harvard saying that the Ivy League must come out against Israel and in support of the Palestinians. You've got the University of Michigan student government releasing a scathing statement that it makes Jewish students feel unwelcome. It harms academic freedom. And look, these are America's future leaders, and it should trouble everyone that there's really no daylight between what they believe and what people like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are pushing in Congress.
Yeah, you've seen their influence that those politicians that you mentioned have on these young students. Clearly, that's coming out as to where they stand when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East. Scott Walker, it does make you wonder how educated these students are when it comes to knowing that Israel is the U.S.'s greatest ally in the Middle East. Do you think they're aware of what that truly implies?
No, they bought into the big lie, and unfortunately we see it not only in this issue but so many others. As was mentioned with LI, we see it as well as Young America's Foundation, this cancel culture, this idea that they only get one point of view. In this case, it's a completely distorted one. We've seen this past week that Hamas actually literally puts missile launchers inside of schools. They use their citizens, particularly their children, as human shields. Israel, in contrast, evacuates their schools, they protect their citizens, and even when they're retaliating, they give advance notice so that everyday citizens can be outside of these targets. This is a country, I've been there many a time, to Israel. It is the only democracy in the Middle East. It's a place where people are often surprised to see not only are there Jewish religious sites, synagogues and otherwise, but there's mosques, there's Christian churches. That's because it's a democracy where there are even Arab members of the Knesset, their legislative body. So they're not hearing the full story, and that's just part of an ongoing example of our campuses where they're only hearing a very radical left-wing point of view, and we need to counter that.
Yeah, it is. You described the Holy Land. I've been lucky enough to go, and it is such a sacred land for people of many different religions. Angela, have there been pro-Israeli groups that you've seen come forward on college campuses? How are they received?
Pro-Israeli groups, unfortunately, are not well received all the time. We have had instances where student groups that support Israel have actually been prevented from establishing themselves or been shut down by university administrators, whether the people calling the shots are students or are working professionals. There is this pervasive anti-Israel sentiment. And by way of example, up until just recently, Syracuse University was allowing their students to intern at a blatantly anti-Semitic, anti-Israel organization for college credit. They're saying this furthers someone's education when in reality, it's doing the opposite. And look, if these students really wanted to stand up for things like freedom, things like human rights that we should all be supporting, if they were really behind that, they would be supporting Israel all the way, because you look at their human rights record compared to that of Hamas, of the Palestinians, and there's just no contest. But they're never taught the other side. They don't know what Israel really is.